Oh my frickety frick, you guys. This is not a drill. I seriously can't believe this happened, but here we are. A day after the highly anticipated sequel to Ghost of Tsushima was announced, and yes, it wasn't a dream. The trailer is still up, Sucker Punch's tweets are still there, and my friends are still freaking out about it with me. Holy crap. It is happening, guys. Let me just take a moment to say how none of us were expecting a Ghost 2 announcement. I guess over the last 2 years, I've learned to expect nothing but disappointment from these state of play streams. Maybe that sounds a little rough, but I believe that the reason we were given this announcement has to do with the overall shape of things in the gaming industry. Sony knew that we needed this because, for one, the PS5 has not been given much when compared to previous generations as far as big titles. All we've seen from these big studios has been remakes and remasters, and quite frankly, I think most of us are just a bit disengaged. After the epic fail that was Concord and the skepticism that gamers have voiced following the PS5 Pro's announcement, they knew that we needed something big to rekindle engagement. These state-of-play streams have been typically for smaller news, and at least I can't recall any big franchises being announced. I think they were definitely trying to throw a curveball at us with this, and it might just be me, but even the beginning of the trailer seems to be trying to throw us off. In retrospect, the black and white portion of it is probably confirmation that Kurosawa mode will return, but since I wasn't expecting it, I thought it was either Trek to Yomi 2 or some other studio riding the RPG samurai power fantasy wave like Assassin's Creed Shadows. I was actually in a voice chat party with friends, and we were all just joking about which game would get another remaster after watching that Horizon Zero Dawn remaster announcement. Like, that has come to be the vibe because every state of play before has set that standard. But when this trailer started, we all got quiet, and I think we all thought, Ghost? Nah. But then when they showed this guy, my friend Potato was the first one to say, "It's Ghost!" because she recognized something that I was actively trying to dismiss. I was in denial until they showed Sucker Punch's logo, and even then I thought, maybe some sort of spin-off? Like, I was convinced that they weren't going to announce something this big on a state of play that was announced, 2 days before? So congrats, Sony, you got me. I guess before we discuss this trailer, we should talk about the fact that Jin is no longer the main character, and now we have a female lead. Before I get too deep into that, I wanted to show this reaction posted by the man himself, Daisuke Tsuji, which I thought was hilarious. He was probably super bummed to find out that he wouldn't be returning as Jin for the sequel, although I wouldn't completely discard the idea that he's involved. It would be very cool if there's a moment in the story where we see what happened to him after the events of Ghost of Tsushima and how he's connected to Atsu. First of all, I want to say that as much as I would have loved a sequel with Jin at the center, I prefer the idea of a new protagonist. I like it when fans aren't given the expected sequel. I'm not a fan of fan service. I like to be given that which I didn't know I wanted. And I'm all for this new lead being female because we have already seen a male lead. This is an inspired decision in my opinion because it represents a balance. So let's take it from the top. According to Deep L, Yōtei means plan or arrangement. The location is not an island like Tsushima, but rather a mountain in Hokkaido, the northern part of Japan. This makes me wonder about the implications because the name must be central to the story. So that's probably the general area we'll be exploring, with Mount Yōtei being at the center of it, both geographically and thematically. But I think this will be a limited open world. First of all, Hokkaido is much bigger than Tsushima. Like 100 times bigger. So if this is going to be an open world, which is the expectation, then it'll likely be something like what the Horizon franchise does, which is a large playable area with limits that is based on a real-world location which is geographically much larger and extends past the open world's limits. I like what the first game did better because it's more immersive to have an island serve as an open world with natural boundaries set by the ocean, but this new setting does offer all kinds of new possibilities. Now let's get some context for the sequel. Hokkaido was previously known as Ezochi, which translates to land of barbarians or land of people who do not obey government, and was colonized following the defeat of the native Ainu rebellious forces and annexed to Japan in May 1869. The Meiji government renamed the area Hokkaido, which translates to Northern Sea Route. This is important to consider because of the implications. In Ghost of Tsushima, we embody Jin as he defends a Japanese island from foreign invading forces.
God damn Mongolians.
This sequel will likely see something more unique, which by the looks of it will be ethnic Japanese versus the native Ainu. One thing I'd like to point out is that in the original trailer for Ghost of Tsushima, the opposing force is clear, and it seems like a more straightforward conflict that way. In this trailer though, there is so much more room for speculation. If we try and compare both trailers, we have to either assume that they're keeping more under wraps this time around, or that like the first game, the main premise can be extracted from its reveal trailer, which if that's the case, then that means it's more of a revenge story and less of a large-scale conflict. I got tons of Kill Bill vibes from this trailer, from the western tones present in the music, to the female lead being a hunter with some sort of kill list. There's just so much to unpack. Let's take a look at the opening sequence. 1603 is the year that marks the beginning of the Edo period, which brought 250 years of stability to Japan. It is a period characterized by economic growth, strict social order, isolationist foreign policies, stable population, and overall peace and popular enjoyment of arts and culture. I'm not going to go into too much detail here because I am hoping that maybe some Japanese content creators will make videos providing cultural context with a far better informed perspective than I can, but I will say that the game taking place during this period of peace and prosperity could mean that the story is indeed about a more personal conflict, and I like that idea because that means it could be something more relatable, which could resonate more with the audience. I think that's a step in the right direction coming from Ghost of Tsushima because as amazing as that journey was, most of us can't relate to what it's like to defend against a foreign invasion. But a revenge story, I think, will be more immersive in comparison. Now let's look at our new protagonist, Atsu, voiced in English by Erika Ishii, who's been on so many video games. Looking at her face on this trailer, I'm captivated by her glance and how expressive it is without uttering a single word. Which I would like to point out how much Sucker Punch has improved the quality of their facial animations and overall fidelity, which is one of the things that I always felt were lacking a little bit in Ghost of Tsushima. So the things that stand out most obviously are the ghost mask and this piece of cloth with kanji on it. The mask is not exactly the ghost mask we know from the first game. It looks like a hybrid between the ghost mask and the Sakai clan mask. Also, there's kintsugi on it, which is the Japanese art of mending broken artifacts using gold. The concept is that what was once broken can be restored and be made more beautiful because it was broken. My first assumption is that she's a descendant of Jin Sakai because she's in possession of this mask, which one could argue has been passed down to her, along with her combat skills, as she's clearly some kind of lone hunter, and for the purposes of the game, there needs to be an explanation of how she learned all these skills that are present in the combat system, which we used in the first game, which I don't see changing much at its core, since it's one of the best ever. Now, as far as what she is, people are going to say Ronin, but seeing as Jin was a former samurai who abandoned the honor code, it's unlikely she then became a Ronin, as they are basically masterless samurai, and I don't get the vibe that she was ever a samurai. I get the vibe that she was always kind of an outlaw. Now, it's anyone's guess why she's on this revenge journey, as it's not clear from the trailer, nor the historical events happening in Japan around that time, but what we can see is that she is an outlaw from the dialogue and what this wanted poster says. It says, "Wanted, age 28-29, sighted on Mount Yōtei, reward of 100 ryo for this woman's head." As for the cloth, these are some of the kanji we could make out, and thanks to my friend Noriko for translating. This one is demon, this one is dragon, and this one is spider. Now, if we are to interpret this as a kill list, then maybe these are nicknames and the man she executes during this scene is on her list and she's crossing his name off her list by wiping his own blood off her katana over his name. Now let's take a look at our new insignia, which replaces Clan Sakai's symbol with the ginkgo leaf. The ginkgo leaf represents many things, all of which have a general theme. There's longevity, as the ginkgo tree can live for over 1,000 years. Resilience, as the ginkgo tree is a living fossil, having survived the extinction event that killed the dinosaurs. Hope, as the ginkgo leaf's elegant shape represents hope in the face of despair. Peace, as the ginkgo leaf represents peace amidst destruction. Stability, as the ginkgo leaf represents stability during upheaval. And love and friendship, as the two-part ginkgo leaf can symbolize love and friendship. This gives our new story some really cool symbolism from the outset, as it's likely what our main character will become or what she strives for. I love what the ginkgo leaf tells us about our new journey and the way things are shaping up so far. I also noticed the new weapons, which make for some exciting speculation about the new combat system. First, there's what looks like dual katanas, for lack of a better term. I'm not an expert, but this doesn't look like the katana-tanto combo we see in the first game. It actually looks like both of them are longer. Then we have the kusarigama, which is this chain sickle she's wielding. I get goosebumps just thinking about what that will add to the existing combat system. Right at the end, we get a glimpse of her shooting a gun, which again gets me super stoked about combat implications. Another thing that caught my eye right at the end was this character using Way of the Flame. And beyond seeing that it's obviously still going to be in the game, I am intrigued about his armor. It has this really cool primitive looking helmet, which makes me think he's some sort of Ainu warrior, and this might be a new kind of foe we'll be seeing. Maybe there will be an Ainu faction that will be hostile, but I honestly can't tell. There's also some regular looking bandits, which will likely be, some of the enemies we fight. And I'm curious to know if they're somehow related to Iki Island, because some of their armor reminds me of Iki bandits, as well as the Sarugami armor. So here we could speculate about allegiances and story beats. Does she initially side with the Ainu? Does she have some sort of allegiance? Maybe, some sort of blood ties to the general Mount Yōtei area? Or does that happen during the course of the story? In the trailer, the man says,
"People come north to disappear,"
which suggests she's not from the north. If she becomes the Ghost of Yotei, then that might indicate that she's an outsider who will become a protector to the interests of the native people, in contrast to Jin, who was a native of Tsushima and also became a protector to his native island, which gives the game its title. Then there's the hilts of her two katanas. One has serpents and one has wolves on it. These definitely symbolize thematic elements in the game, with the wolf being the most obvious one. Looks like we'll have a wolf companion, and that also has super interesting implications for combat and exploration. Maybe the wolf will help you track either people or things down, and in combat he could serve to pull aggro or create space to avoid being overwhelmed. As for the snakes, there aren't any clear references that we can pull from the trailer, and we can only allude to some sort of dark arts like venom or stealth, which snakes traditionally represent. All that I can say is get ready to have your heart torn to shreds when the wolf invariably dies defending Atsu. Don't say I didn't warn you, because the horse definitely has plot armor since they already killed our first horse. This new horse is going to be acting all ignorant and irresponsible like he's Tom Cruise doing his own stunts. Anyway, Kaze, I miss you, buddy. The other thing that's cool is that we now have a different musical instrument, which is a shamisen, as opposed to the shinobue we used in Ghost 1. That and the glimpses we get at some of the scenery in the game definitely have me stoked to vibe out with some music against a backdrop of all kinds of epic Japanese vistas. And speaking of music, there's no way of knowing if this will be the new theme, but the song that we can hear toward the end of the trailer definitely gave me all the feels and set my expectations for another epic soundtrack, which I can't stress enough how essential the first one was for that game to hit as hard as it did. It was the reason the most meaningful story beats for me were fully realized. Like that initial moment where you're riding your horse out of the woods and into that field of white flowers, and then the music plays out and you reach out your hand and touch the flowers and the music just swells. That kind of epicness is what I'm talking about. I also wanted to comment on the gourd on her hip. It makes me wonder if the healing system will be changed. I wonder if she's going to have a healing gourd with potions that offer different boosts, like in Wukong, or if they'll keep Resolve as the only source of healing. It would make sense for them to change that because it would make builds more interesting, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Lastly, I wanted to talk about this glimpse we get at the end of what seems to be a new move. It's this upward cut, which resembles a similar move in the heavy water stance combo a little bit. It makes me think that some of those moves are maybe getting variations and the stance system is maybe getting refined. Honestly, one of the few things I wish they'd change about the stances is the fact that they have 4 different starting positions, out of which 3 don't look combat ready at all. Wind, Moon, and Water all have a starting position which leaves you open for attacks. Only Stone is an actual combat ready stance. The others don't even look cool, they just look silly and are honestly unnecessary, but I get they were implemented as a sort of visual cue for players to see in which stands they're currently fighting. I personally don't think it's necessary to have anything more than an audio cue because you already get a visual cue from the UI showing you the stance switch to the current stance, and I hope they follow the approach they've shown with this new Ghost mask, which is a return to simplicity and how it's usually the most elegant choice, which is evident throughout Japanese culture. The old Ghost mask had these angles and features which made it look a little bit robotic and a little bit too modern. Same with the cape on the Ghost armor, which had this random print on the lower right side, which made it look like a print on clothing straight out of 2005. And speaking of clothing, the outfit Atsu is wearing in the trailer is definitely evocative of what Jin is wearing on the E3 gameplay reveal trailer, and I love that. It's obviously not the Ghost armor, but it is emblematic. All in all, I think this trailer has given us a lot to be excited about. Improvements are palpable, and I have absolute faith that Sucker Punch is going to deliver on all fronts and then some. Take my money! Matane!